Mm-hmm. Okay, this is for real. Hi, I'm Kathy Johnson, and welcome to Town Talk. I have with me today my guest, Jay Halpern, who lives in my hometown, Oxford. And Jay and I are going to talk about some various things concerning Oxford. I expect it to be a very interesting program, and how I would describe my guest is my personal opinion. He's very provocative. So I want to welcome Jay, and I want to say to Jay, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to Town Talk.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And provocative, well, I promise I will keep my clothes on this time. There you go.
There you go. Okay.
Take care of that.
Yeah, families might be watching. That's right.
Okay. So, a little bit about myself. Well, I want to go way back, for example, to my youth. I grew up on Long Island, but right near Queens. So it was within the shadow of New York City. And in my community, well, there was a lot of social activism that was developing. It grew into the civil rights movement, and it grew into the anti-Vietnam War movement, and it grew into poverty concerns, etc. I walked my first picket line at the age of 13 when I was supporting the grape workers boycott out in California, and that was Cesar Chavez and so forth. And in my town, which is Rockville Center, we got up, a petition and so forth. We demonstrated, in favor of fairness for migrant workers. And going from there, in high school, I started a group called Youth Against Poverty. You might say, people say, oh, it came from Long Island, everybody's rich. No, everybody's not rich, particularly those of us who live right next to Queens. There was a whole diversity of folks. And Youth Against Poverty grew into a lot of work done by high school students. And along with that, as I hit more of the 16, 17-year-old age, I became, they had just federally created the Economic Opportunity Council, and we had a division in our town, and I was asked to be the youth program coordinator there for all of the folks who attended that. And I was able to, help guide kids my age into the right paths. I was able to provide activities and so forth, helping guys decide, to go to college. When I, in fact, because of my upbringing being rather derelict, there's compulsive gambling and alcoholism in my particular household. I was the only student who was an honor student who wasn't prepped at the second semester of the senior year to know where I'm going to go to college.
Wow, Jay.
I had no idea, didn't even think about it. I was busy with my other things. And I had this wonderful guidance counselor, Mr. Alessi, who took me aside. Now, Mr. Alessi, I just have to say this about him. He went on a vacation over a summer to Italy. He came back, he had very dark beard, hair, and everything. He came back, his beard was short, but it was scalloped, like Greek waves all along the edge of his beard.
Like a Greek statue.
He just came in with this. I thought,
Zeus.
man, that was great. It was terrific. So I don't have that kind of hair. I can't grow that kind of beard, but it was perfect, and it was quite bold, and I respected him for that. So he took me aside, and he said, what are your plans for college? And I don't have any. He says, you're top of the class, man. Aren't you going to, get some plans? I said, you got some ideas? Help me out. He said,
Right.
It's spring semester. Well, he guided me to New York City. He guided me to Hunter College, great college.
Right.
I went there, and that moved into New York. Took over a rent control department as one guy was leaving, who was a friend of a friend, and everything. I took over that, and then got from Hunter scholarship for a special master's program at Columbia University. But you had to do everything in 2 semesters, which
Wow.
includes writing your thesis. Foreign language exam, all of the courses you have to take, and everything, all 1 year, and have your thesis written, etc. Did that, taught a class, and said, well, I don't know. Academia is not for me. And I went out back into social, involvement, and, made money by doing construction work, and, whatever I could get my hands on, and so forth. And then our apartment was destroyed. We lost rent control. We left as refugees from my beloved Manhattan,
Right.
to which I would return within 30 seconds if I was able to return.
You certainly fit into Manhattan, I can tell you that.
Well, it's a whole world. And so
Yes.
right now it's it's way too gentrified compared to what it was when I lived
Define
there.
gentrified.
Gentrified means that to be able to live there, you have to be very rich.
Okay.
And in order to sustain that kind of money, you end up thinking about nothing except how do I make the next buck? And that is not the path that the higher power wants us on. You don't need to really think about the next.
That's a new word for me. I always love talking to you, Jay, because honestly, you have a wonderful vocabulary I know that you can talk in words that the average person, and I'm going to always ask you, I learned a new word, gentrified.
Well, and please, if I say something that is a little, bizarre or we don't know what it is, you just
I
let
will
me know.
ask you, Jay, but I think it's wonderful. I want our audience to know how educated you are, and because many people judge the book by its cover, and of course you have chosen your own look, which I love your look. But
Well, let me correct that. A lot of people think that having long hair and a beard is the road of the low life and everything. Let me simply point out that people who think of me as an aging hippie, are really applying the wrong designation. Because if you want to say, let's go back to Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and where everybody had beards and long hair, okay?
Right.
Everybody from both of the good books had long hair and beards. So if you want to be demeaning towards people with that, you say something about aging hippie, drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Think instead of if you want to find the models against whom I balance myself and compare myself, I'm looking way back.
Right.
So, you guys are way behind the times in terms of, looking at people who have hair or a beard like mine and say, well, aging here. How about aging philosopher?
I like that. Aging philosopher, a combination between Socrates and Leonardo da Vinci, maybe.
There you go.
All right.
The bunch of my role models, and those are the folks that I do study to this day, and I can't get enough of them.
And I can see that because you're a sponge for knowledge, but you left off saying that academia just wasn't for you. Do you mean the learning in academia or just teaching?
No, the teaching, and at that time I taught 1 semester, and then I moved on to a different life because I went and got my master's to be a writer, not to be a teacher. And before I end up being expelled from New York by the finger of my God, said, you're too settled here. There's more that you need to do elsewhere. You don't even know what's coming from you. So I will get you out of here, and knocked this building down. So fortunately, nobody was hurt. It was well designed. I mean, the higher power is not stupid. The higher power does things to move people along. Ended up in Oxford, but at
No
the
man's
time,
land.
well, the first thing I did to make some money was, well, I had the credential. I started teaching at UNH. Did that for a little while. During that time, because, the books that I got, one I got published, one I wrote and kept. The first one that I wrote is called Sell Fantastic, which is a phrase taken from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
C-E-L-L?
C-E-L-L, right, as opposed to selling something. Right?
Okay.
Because the sell fantastic with a C-K at the end in Middle English means a portion of the brain which is the seat of the imagination, the cell of fantasy.
Wow.
Okay, so the book is called, and it is a stream of subconsciousness about thus and such. It is available to anybody who wants to read it on archive.org, which is the internet's major repository for like a library. You can go to many different libraries.
Archive.org.
Archive.org.
Sell Fantastic.
Well, just if you look up Jay Halpern, you find a few things up there.
Okay.
Yeah. But bottom line is that was written during those years, and then when I wanted to make some money from my writing, I wrote The Jade Unicorn. That got published. It was a lot of publicity. It was Macmillan's lead fiction, and when I got thrust for my higher powers, good reasoning, sent me out of New York, ended up here. During my teaching at UNH, I was asked by VARCA, those who may know VARCA, it's a shelter workshop.
Yes.
I was asked by VARCA if I would do a promotion on one of their, what do they call us? People you get on TV and they want you to know the what they do, the good work they do. The telethon.
Telethon.
Yeah, it was a telethon.
Yeah, and to raise money.
Right, where I come up there, because there's a, at that time, local celebrity. Now, not knowing anything about VARC or whatever, so yeah, they do great work, et cetera, et cetera. I was teaching, and I go back and talk with the executive director there, Stan Myers, very wonderful, wise man, had a diverse interest. He did the theater. He had a very resonant, deep voice. He could see he was doing Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof. He do all this.
Although that, yeah.
I went back to him and I said, Stan, I'm teaching at UNH, but this is, this is college level. So I'll bet your guys really need to learn serious stuff. How to do this, that, and the other thing. And he smiles at me. And he says, just so happens that we are applying to raise our designation with a certification group. And in order to do that, I'm trying to develop a division for folks who have heretofore not been admitted to VARCA.
Now, these are for disabled people.
Yeah, it's a sheltered workshop for people with mental retardation and who have, state support in different ways.
Right.
Many live at home, some, live elsewhere. So, however, he said, I would like somebody such as you to run that program. And I said, Stan, remember, I'm telling you, I have my master's in English and comparative literature. And he smiles. I know. My office is right upstairs. If you have any questions, see me. I said, all right, man. Well, first of all, at that point in time, we're talking, in the early 80s, there wasn't any sort of certification process. There weren't classes to specifically deal with this sort of thing, to go to and learn from, where you had to be certified. Now in an age of certification explosion, it's become abusive.
Yes, it has.
Now people can't just go in and do the work that they know what to do, because insurance companies won't back them. Be that as it may, I don't get off onto that tangent. That's a whole other issue. This accreditation inflation is dismal and evil. Back then, this was viable, and Stan knew, and I knew, having learned all I did and being socially involved through all the years that I had already been involved, that you learn from the people who have the needs.
That's exactly right.
They teach you.
Yes.
They're the gurus.
Right.
If you think that going into a class and talking with somebody who hasn't been in the rooms with these folks for 30 years, who's been in a school, who stops in to collect a lot of money walking into these team meetings, what does he do? What does she do? Well, pearl necklace, and speaks to the direct care staff, the people who are least educated, who are least paid. And, well, what do you think Johnny needs? Well, he needs blah, blah, blah. Okay, but it sounds good, Well, okay, I'll set up a program for that and everything. What else do you think over there? Well, he likes to bite a lot. Well, what do how can we distract him from that? Well, I think we could do this. All right, okay, we'll do this. Now there's a behavior program in writing by somebody making thousands of dollars.
Right.
Goes there, you do it. Okay, well, they're the ones who are doing it.
Right.
They're the ones who are there.
Right,
And
right.
they're the ones who know what needs to be done. And that's the way, people need to serve those who have challenges. You need to be there. Take off the purple necklace.
Right.
Don't pay the bills you've run up trying to get your master's in social work or whatever they require now. And then, of course, you got to charge an arm and a leg and so forth.
And Jay, isn't that what a good teacher does? I mean, a teacher who has the vocation to teach, they hone in on each student and how they can make that student the best they can be, but based on what they learn about the student.
Right.
Isn't that our government has taken that away from really true inspired teachers? But isn't that what you were even doing with the disabled?
Well, absolutely, and I've been in that field, alternating or sometimes going simultaneously with college teaching, because I really never left that. But the bottom line is that being, a program director, being, manager, this, that,
Sure.
other thing, being administrator, what you do is you got to be on the floor with the folks who need you on the floor. You have to be up to here in feces because you're doing the cleaning as well as your staff are doing the cleaning when there has been an accident. You have to develop the strategies that do things. And so that is what has taught me, according to what I think my highest values, my higher power would want me to learn and how to implement things.
Yes.
And then when you see others in society doing other things, particularly when they are dangerous to others, then you see the red flags.
The red flag.
The red flags.
The red flags when you see the red danger, Will Robinson.
Right. When you see the red flag up there, something is askew, and you need to kick into Plan B.
How do you know what a red flag is? Is it internal? Is it based on your own knowledge, or is it? It's not an easy question, I don't think, but a red flag, something that tweaks your thought that this may not be right.
Well, sometimes a red flag is purely from insight. When you were talking about great teachers.
Yes.
Well, how did Socrates get students? He was a stonecutter.
He had to have a spark in him that attracted people.
He had insights.
Yes.
He didn't go take a class in metaphysics or something like that. He didn't take a class in that. He had insights. He understood by looking at nature, by seeing how people behave, by learning, what other people. He was well read for his era. He knew about how governments, work. And how did Plato teach? How did Aristotle? They developed their own schools because they had people who were attracted to learning from them and who could then go on to do other things. Now you have the dark side of that in that period when you have what are called today the sophists. And these are people who they were like law school professors. They would teach people, well, this is how you use rhetoric, and this is how you sell your idea to the local Senate or to the government and everything. And, well, if your idea is going to make you money, you do it this way. If somebody comes along and says, well, I'll pay you more money, you got to say the opposite, you do it that way.
Motive. Motive is everything.
Right. Well, it's
Motive.
the sophists were known for teaching people how to use language. And in fact, Shakespeare, he says that all the time. He says that, in Hamlet, he says to the rich people who were sponsoring him, and sometimes he had issues with them and so forth. He was saying, treat your poets and your actors well. This is in Hamlet. Treat them well because they will create your history. They will tell the future how you behave, because that's what, so you better treat them nicely. And again, it was from the artists and so forth who create the future's vision of the past. And these guys, the vision of the past that we have of them comes from, other people creating. Socrates didn't write a word in his teaching. It was Plato's work about him. And it goes on and on. Aristotle, major genius, wrote this amazing, huge book. Those are all classroom notes. He didn't sit down to write a book.
Those
they
were,
all notes.
as he's teaching, those are his notes.
That's what he prepared for the classes, which is why sometimes in interpreting it, it's like, what's this all about? But you have that in religion too, when you have with, the Midrash or the Mishnah, when you have among the Jews who are trying to deal with the Tanakh, which is the Bible, what non-Jews will call the Old Testament. See, with Jews, you don't have an Old Testament. You have the Tanakh, and then that's it,
Yeah.
Well, again, that had to be expanded with the Talmud and Midrash and Mishnah and so forth, other things, where people are discussing this and getting these ideas together and getting their insights together. So part of your answer is you have insight, but the insight is driven by your experience, what you see, what makes sense, and that's where you also learn from experience. Now, some people have the same experiences as others. It doesn't come to them. They don't see it. They don't have that kind of insight.
It just doesn't happen. If you wanted to get technical, or that part of their brain is maybe not elevated to the point to get that insight.
Oh, no. That's putting them down. That's what works. What I get an insight about may be very different. What that individual's insight is about. I'd be totally lost doing what that guy's going to do, and that's a good thing. You're doing a good thing, whatever it is. Okay, I can't do it because I don't have the insights or the experience that have developed those insights. So you never say that, well, I got the insight. No, I have some insights that have helped me do what I've been able to do.
So therefore,
it's also helped me get fired on a few occasions.
Well, well, usually people like us, I've never really been fired, but I've walked that line. I've walked that line where I'm a thorn in every employer's side, but that's okay. But
I've blown whistles. I mean, it becomes,
well,
oh my God, we're in trouble now. I warned you. I said, you don't let pedophiles play with the neighborhood kids without supervision in a group home. But we put it in the behavior. Yeah, how sick is that?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right.
I go through the steps. You turn me away. All right, boom, I call the state. I'm right. They have to change everything. Well, I get fired for something else later on. Something bogus.
Of course.
Get him out of here.
Oh, yeah, because he's just he's spoiling our plan.
Well, I'm not going to be part of something.
No, you're not.
That is going to hurt somebody.
No, and I agree, Jay. So we talked about red flags. So now the red flags.
The red flag is, oh my God, when you see something like that happen, you know it shouldn't be. You go through a process that is the official process of how to do this. Doesn't work, kaboom, and this is that's where you run into problems. And of course, you
Now, when you recognize a red flag, like, and you go after it, there will be people who say, "Oh, you haven't exercised a degree of decorum," or another phrase is, I like finding common ground, but I also have realized through the years, if you think back on people who have seen red flags and they have stood up for them, today they have statues in Washington, but at the time that they were paying attention to the red flags, they were demonized. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. Comes to mind. If you
Got
want to
sh-
go way,
got shot.
yes, when you want to go way back, Jesus comes to mind, and many other prophets and many other people who put themselves on the line and didn't act with the degree of decorum that was expected of them. And as a woman, and now that we're going into an election, and I being female and elected official, it's very hard for me as a woman to maintain my femininity, maintain a level of, oh, she's not a completely crazy person. But when I see a red flag, I call it the way it is, and I take my consequences to go along with it, but I call it what it is. That's it.
Well, I mean, and what else
Can you
you
do?
do?
That's
Because
right.
if you don't do that, and the red flag lives itself to its conclusion,
Right.
and then, there's a higher, I don't know about everybody else or what you believe, but somebody is watching me.
Right.
And then I got to go to sleep saying, I could have done something, I could have, would have, should have.
Right.
And they're nothing.
Right.
Too much work. People who you want to have help you because they should be having a similar insight now that, things are happening. Oh, that's not how we do it. We don't do this. We don't do that.
No, no.
Again, all of that stuff. Let them deal with their higher power.
Well, I can remember. Well,
Mine's really, he, she, it. I prefer it myself. It's a neutral. It,
yes.
It is looking at me and say, yeah. And it and I have a great relationship. I mean, I will drop the F-bomb. What?
Yeah, well,
Are you kidding?
Disney named it Jiminy Cricket, your conscience. All right, and so
Well, it was a good song.
It was a good song. Your conscience gets to you. But when I've been in Hartford advocating for brain injured, and I get up and I let them have it, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't thank a legislator for allowing me to speak. They should be thanking me for giving them their vote and allowing them the opportunity and honor to represent us. So when I go up there, I don't thank them. I tell them what I think should be, how it is for brain injury and what. And I've been told that maybe you should exercise a degree of decorum. And my comment has been, when you exercise a degree of caring, I therefore will exercise a degree of decorum. Now, how's that sound? And that doesn't usually happen because they're thinking of the next buck, the next power trip, the next ego, the next election, and how they're going to win.
It's the next election.
It's the next election.
They love to go back into that environment.
That
they have
little
these great
world.
photographs. As soon as you're elected, they stand you behind.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Right, and now anybody you meet at a cocktail party, is going, oh, what do you do for a living? Here's my card.
Oh, yes, I'm a senator.
Right.
I sit there and play footsies with both sides of the aisle, but if it doesn't agree with me, then I do what needs to get me reelected. I see that, and that's what's going on right now. But now I'm going to ask you about red flags in your shirt.
Red flags. Well, before you get it, I like your use of the word decorum.
Yes.
And there's an old phrase, dulce est decorum est. Dulce et decorum est.
Sweet.
Pro patria more. Dulce est decorum. Dulce et decorum est pro patria more. I
Latin.
apologize. My Latin is it's a little thick. And what it means is sweet and decorous, which is what decorum means. It's how you are sweet and how you should behave to die for your country. So beautiful and sweet it is to die for your country. Yeah. And apropos what we were speaking about, now on occasion it's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. On other occasions, you die for what you believe in, and please God, your country is always guiding you in that direction. Mm-hmm. We're in a very divided country.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
A lot of angry people.
A lot of angry people, and if you die for one side, that side will say, dulce decorum est pro patria more. Mm-hmm. The other side is going to say, you're an idiot, you're as evil as the others, and that you got what you deserve because look what you're doing over there. And then you swap that around. Back like in the Vietnam days, when people did protest the war because it was, bogus, and history has shown that. I mean, you get guys on their deathbed, like Robert McNamara. He went on to be.
Who admitted?
He admits on his deathbed, he said this, Gulf of Tonkin, that was all a lie. We did that to justify what we were
Sure.
going to do. But it was, when you're facing your maker, some people do break down.
Manipulation.
Yeah, so some people do that, and you realize that a lot of people who suffered from that paid a dear price for being manipulated. You know, imagine the people who died for the Nazis during World War II. They were moved along by a psychopath, a liar, and a sick person, and they went running around.
Right time, right place. People feeling very badly about themselves. Right time, right place.
Well,
they bought into this.
Whatever, there's a long historical thing we could get into for
Sure,
hours,
sure.
But the point is, when you make the ultimate sacrifice for something, you want to make sure that you sacrifice for your insight, for where you believe. And yeah, in that case, it's beautiful to die for your country, or to die for a loved one, or to die for X, Y, Z. All of that is extremely important because it says that you're going to do the right thing even if it costs you the election, even
that's right.
if it costs you your life.
And my anti-power plant stance probably might have cost me the election for the first selectman spot, but that's neither here nor there.
You do what you have to do, and as long as you do it sincerely and you do it fully and everything, you're in that insight game. So you're doing what you need to do, and you're following your conscience, and that's the deal. Now, red flags.
Red flags.
What would you like to know about red flags?
Now,
they're all over the place.
They're all over the place. Are there red flags in Oxford?
Oh, there have been major red flags.
Flags in Oxford, yes. And I also see the shirt too, but we'll talk about that when you're ready.
Yeah, well, a little bit. But because I brought a little thing about red flags to try to hold up, before. Back in '98, now remember, I ended up here in '79. No issues, anything. This was a place. I even have a copy which I couldn't find to bring today. It was in the mid to late '80s, where some Oxfordian, wrote this Christmas carol song about Oxford. And it's how beautiful it is, and it's a country setting, and you get sleigh rides on Schreiber's farm, and you do this and that. This was Oxford. Now, I'm coming out of Manhattan. I couldn't wait to get the hell back into Manhattan, but at least there was all of this going on, and it was a beautiful place, In '98, thereabouts.
Yeah, you got the timing right.
Okay. I pick up the voices, open this thing, say, welcome to the power plant.
I know, it blew my mind.
What? Power plant?
I went nuts.
In this place? Now, you're talking major red flag. What happened? And in reading the article, there's land owned by the town that was given a contract to build a power plant on. Well, this is a big red flag. The people are supposed to vote in a referendum on how you sell your land. Our land, town land. That didn't happen. Who started this? What power plant? What people? Why is this such a big secret? How did it suddenly happen? And it turns out that, well, when you explore the red flags, let me also say that among the social interests I have, my wife Jackie and I are really committed environmentalists. We even got an award one year for organic landscaping and everything from State Department of Environmental Protection.
Right.
It was really great. All right, so we're into this. To me, burning fossil fuels at this point in time is as viscerally wrong as supporting a kill shelter for animals. It just sickens me. We should not be doing. Now, do I put gas in my car? Yes, I do, because I don't have the money for the alternative, but I could have if the the 1%, shall we say, haven't decided that instead of investing in all of the stuff that would change that, we're going to invest in more burning of
Well,
fossil
they're
fuels.
still sopping up gravy, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, you read any of the
If there
books.
was one speck of gravy left out of that bowl, they'd be sopping it up.
Yeah. Well, one of my role models was Buckminster Fuller. I saw him in person at a lecture he gave in Manhattan, and his word of wisdom is that we shouldn't be taking fossil fuels out of the ground. Let that be there when our sun explodes at the end of, its life,
Right.
and be part of the fireworks. We don't need to be burning that stuff.
And
We can do this, that, and he invented a ton of stuff that, didn't see the light of day because people wanted to stop that. Water engines and so on.
Well, you notice simultaneously they're pushing the natural gas power plants on TV. At the same time, they're pushing the solar and the windmills. There's something going on there. It's not by accident that this is happening, and I don't think people realize that natural gas is a fossil fuel.
Well, I would think that those who don't realize that have not tuned into, very much. But be that as it may.
So we get back to the land.
Well, when you get back to the land, you say,
We had the perfect piece of property
Well-
for this plant. They walked into our town and said, "Oh boy, the gas line is there."
that's where it becomes perfect. We didn't have the perfect piece of property because other plants of a similar nature are built not on aquifers for their water. They're built either flowing rivers or by the sea, where you can, get stuff that is not going to seriously impact your particular
And we
interior.
have an aquifer there, right?
Yeah, it's right. What's on top of it, but it's also, almost within spitting distance. And yes, I know that's an exaggeration. That is called hyperbole.
Okay, thank you. I know that one. Yes.
Hyperbole, right? Yeah, but in fact, in the process of us responding to this red flag, I went out with video cameras one winter to show how close it is to the proposed site was to the airport,
Right.
which is now the second largest airport in Connecticut. It
I
has a
didn't
lot
know
of
that.
yeah,
Okay.
it is. There's traffic going through there because you have it's bigger than anything in New Haven.
Right.
And what are the other airports here? You have we're little airport. This was a little airport for individuals. Now, it's working with jets. It's big money. So, it was not the smartest deal for them in terms if you worry about someone getting hurt.
Well, who cares
Why
about
was it
that?
the smartest
Money,
deal? Why was it the smartest deal? Okay, on that property happened to be gas line and power line together on that property. Well, that means if you're going to build a power plant, you need to bring in gas and you need to bring in power lines. Well, in every other part of Connecticut, that would mean that you're going to have to go over private property, go through other towns and everything, and they're going to have to pay to do that. That junction is worth millions to this group.
Yes.
Only in that industry. Nobody else would pay that kind of money for it, and everybody wanted to get rid of it. It wasn't, it was an eyesore. Whatever. But for that thing, it is worth millions. That's like having the only niche of huge diamonds or something under your property, and you go to De Beers, and they're a big diamond miner and everything, and you're going to sell your property to De Beers. Well, the price should be jacked up. You're not selling your property because there's a house to live in. You're selling the diamonds. All right. Well, that noted. What do you think?
Here comes the red flag.
All
right.
Well, red flag number one is these guys are out of their mind. They're going to build a power plant near an airport and on an aquifer. So already, are you kidding? Okay. Then, well, what did these guys pay for this contract that you signed that we didn't know anything about? What did they pay for that with this on them?
$150,000, I believe.
$150,000. The woman who negotiated this thing paid 6 times that for her house in Westport. Right afterwards, I think. I know.
Yeah, you
150
you
grand.
do the math. That's right.
Right. Why would anybody do that? Red flag. Red flag. Well, why would someone do that? Well, speculate all you want. Speculate all you. I go to the meeting.
Yeah, could there be a little bag of money being passed around?
Or a big bag.
Or a big bag, yeah.
Or a little bag, big bag. You know,
Oh,
somebody's going to get something.
That was the year our zoning board went completely crazy. There wasn't a piece of property they wouldn't have put a outhouse on for 10 cents a urination.
Well, but also you have to think, who was running the state at the time?
Let me think about that. Was it Rowland? No.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Rowland.
John Rowland. Rowland got into office, and everybody said, "Wow, now we can scalp everybody. This, no one will be, whatever." And who was running GE at the time? This guy has been notorious. The employees, one group of employees call him the Undertaker. Mm-hmm. Another group call him Neutron because he blasts people, just wipes people out, if he has an issue. If he has, excuse me, there's a wire hanging there. I wasn't sure what that was, but...
We're taping for the FBI.
Yeah, well, they're welcome to see.
Yes.
So, when you understand that the turbines that were being sold for this project...
And those are what's worth all the money, the turbines.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they were General Electric. So you have a consortium here of General Electric wanting to get a market for their turbine. They're going to do this, and putting up a shell company, which turned out to be, Arena Capital, which came in and paid $150,000 for this. The woman running it had worked at GE Financial, and but these are the things. Well, yeah, I mean, these are the things that you see as you get to look into things, and these are things that needed to be avoided. And kept away from the public.
And they did a good job of avoiding the public.
Well, and it wasn't due to the wisdom of the folks we had representing us. Because I'll tell you right off the bat, first thing I did, they had a meeting, and I raised my hand and said, "Excuse me, you're going to build a power plant on residentially zoned land?"
Oh, I love this. This gets good. Yeah.
And they look at each other like, oh my God. They were so driven by the fascination of the Gold Coast. This was people from the Gold Coast coming up to say hello to them, to go out drinking with them. People who would not spit on them in an apartment store. These are people who would have nothing to do with them, and I'm quite sure that over the last 20 years...
And promised pie in the sky, a high school.
Well, that's we're getting, I would get into that. I don't want to leap into that.
No, go ahead.
These are people who never socialize with these. They make this... I have to tell them that it is residential, you idiots. They run in and have a meeting, well, okay, it's not residential anymore. Well, these people watching them from the Gold Coast, they say, these people are idiots.
Backwoods.
Right. They're, we need to get help into them. Now, I will speculate on some of the help. Pure speculation.
Okay, we'll say that.
Okay.
All right.
They decided, well, first of all, the people of Oxford had already spent $500,000 on open space. We are, well, at least then, we're people who believed in open space, keeping it green, non-industry, which is why they had to avoid a referendum. How did they do this? Well, turns out they have a town meeting, and town meetings around here, unless you say something that's of real interest, like, hey, we're going to have a vote on whether we should have a power plant or not, how many people go? Unless,
Very few.
right. And
10 in the room if you're lucky.
and that's a sign of a healthy society. Plato says, how do you know if you have an unhealthy society? And the answer is, count the number of doctors and lawyers. If you have a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers, you have an unhealthy society. 500 BC. I mean, he knew, it's the same today. You have an unhealthy society
Now,
with
when
too
you
many
say
doctors.
let me stop you. When you
Please.
say referendum, I do remember that we had 3 questions on a ballot one year of, do you want to buy the high school property, Twin Brooks? Do you want to sell Tawanek Hill? And the third question, let me think. Oh, do you want to spend $3.5 million on the Rock House Hill Sanctuary? Do you remember that those 3 were on one ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now people are going to ask, how do you see that? What didn't we vote to even put the? It was on the ballot to sell the property. It only passed by 62 votes because people were promised a high school.
Well, it passed by 120, and had
difference
60 people changed their mind, it would have tied. And so,
Okay, you're
out
right.
of 5,000 people voting, is hardly a referendum. And I think, well, again, speculation, but if you're going to stuff ballots, you need stuff ballots. You need to bring more ballots with you. If you don't know how many ballots you need to throw in to that particular mix, you should bring more with you. But the bottom line is, well, let's face it, it was the one and only paper ballot that had been used in Oxford until that time. Why? Oh, why don't we use? Oh, too expensive to get the regular machines out.
The mechanicals.
Right.
Yeah.
The machines. Here they have just throw it in there, which is highly vulnerable.
So when you
at
talk
the time.
about no referendum, you're talking about the early stage of what to do with the
I'm talking about when that contract was signed. It was signed without a referendum. It was signed
before it went to that vote, huh?
Right, before it went to any vote.
Right.
In fact, part of the reason there ever was a referendum was to convince the siting council against what I and others were saying, that the people don't want that. We never wanted it. We didn't get to vote on that. So I think it was their attorney Sokolov, who used to be in the Students for Democratic for a Democratic Society, SDS.
Oh, yeah.
The infamous radical leftists.
The SDS.
Sokolov used to be, one of those guys, which is great. I like the man. He was on the wrong side, but he reminded me, but didn't quote properly, the statement by Winston Churchill. If you're young and aren't a revolutionary, you have no heart. If you're old and aren't a conservative, you have no head.
Oh, yeah, I remember that quote.
Yeah, because I said to him, what happened to you, man? Come on, SDS. Why aren't you fighting, for what? And he just smiled. He said, well, I've left my heart, I've got my head. Something to that effect.
Yes.
But it's right out of Winston Churchill.
Right, right.
But anyway, so this happens before anything. Well, the technique was you go to a town meeting, and a lot of people, don't attend. Well, if you know there's something going on and you want a few people, make sure you win this particular town meeting vote, you get a few people by telephone, let them know stuff that other people, stack the meeting. Well, there's a term, I like that.
Yeah, you stack the meeting, and that's how town meetings go.
And what was voted on was to give the first selectman for 15 months, 18 months, 15 months, the power to sign contracts selling land to anybody who comes in. It was in that one person's power. Well, that's dangerous as hell, but that was signed. Boom, people show up, a contract is signed, and then we're welcoming the power. That's when I find out about it, but the contract is signed. Residential property. Whoa, they run around, they had to go through that, have to do a new contract, fix that, do a new contract, and on and on. And those contracts have evolved ever since.
And a lot of amendments to that original.
Well, that's what I mean. The contracts
huge,
are
yes, a
evolving.
lot.
You know.
I mean, you go back to the original contract that George had held the sword of Damocles over everyone's head at the last referendum we had that went down. That if we didn't vote that way, we would have to get less money. Well, if you notice, he went right back and renegotiated essentially the same agreement that he proposed that a few months ago. But again, I'll say that there's a lack of credibility there. We're always being threatened if we do this, we do that, or whatever. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm building up a history for what was, and now we see some.
Yeah, let's go back to next.
So you're talking about these red flags.
Right.
Okay? Well, now you do something about them, and all of a sudden, I have to be involved. Now, some people at the time in '98, right? Oh, look, he's being active with this. This is Jay Halpern. He's doing it because he wants to run for office or something. Excuse me. Running late? Are we running out of our time?
We have 10 minutes, but we have 10 minutes. It went by too fast.
It did. Okay. All right.
But we can do part two. But let's go on.
Okay.
All right.
Well, what I'm saying is people were, from the bad side, the dark side, were saying, oh, well, he's got involved because he wants to run. From 79 to 98, I didn't know what the inside, except for the library of Town Hall looked like.
Right.
I had to find out from people, how do I look up records? I had to go into the room and they show you. I don't have political aspirations like that, but I did need to step into boots that I did not ever want to step in order to do what I needed to do when I see the red flags. Now, I would use that, we have 10 minutes, let me use that briefly.
All right. You have we have a prop. Okay.
Here's a prop, and let me see, tilt it this way.
There it
Okay.
is.
Now, if you can read this and look at this, you go to this, at my suggestion, Oxford owed over $10 million in back taxes. And that's on YouTube. So you search that. And Temple is quoted in writing, how did you let this go on? And there were plenty of red flags. Plenty of red flags.
This power plant seems to owe us a lot of money that they never pay, but go ahead.
Well, again, I'm not here to discuss the tax collector. Okay. But it seems this issue had began around then. But what Temple is saying, there were plenty of red flags. I would say to him, what the hell did you do when you saw these red flags? How did the red flags keep waving? How come everything kept going until somebody had to stumble over what was going on? If there were all these red flags that you're right, how come the same auditors throughout this period are still working for the town of Oxford after they let all of this happen? It's not one person, in my opinion. Getting off track, it's not one person. There's a collective that needs to be looked at, how this could all continue. And there's all these red flags, but nothing is being done to stop it. Okay, so I brought that. You guys can all, look at this. Peekaboo. You can look at this, and the red flags mounted, and you find that over time, what was going to be then is now going to be, they hope, twice the size now. Mm-hmm. We stopped it for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. We stopped it. There was internal fighting among the people who, were trying to put this together.
Money got short. The money that
the investors saw there was opposition, and the investors also saw there was not going to be a cross-sound cable. Mm-hmm. That was one of the big targets.
That's right. It was supposed to go through the sound. I remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't going to be that because somebody back then was worried about the environment. Good for them. But again, so today we are left not with a done deal. We are left with something that has evolved from, when the seed is corrupt. The first contract is written, it's residential. It's written without a referendum. It's written, and you have to run around play. And again, people arrived in town Well, let me conclude by saying that when there was offered, after everybody went into an uproar, they had an open meeting for the town for people to come to. It was a big deal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And a guy comes to moderate that. He went to high school with me. He was in my grade. What do you do? Yeah, well, it turns out his business is running front guard for the 1%. He has a website, and for 30 years, people who in the biggest corporations, some of them nonprofits, who find themselves in trouble, find out how to deal with an angry public. How do you get away with it? How do you calm them down? How do you do this or that? You know, and all of this.
Expert.
He's the guy who's representing this power plant. And I'm looking like, well, why they pick him? You know? Then he goes, you know, then we go on and see a number of other transitions. People who move into town and take over political parties. People who move into town and are suddenly introduced. One guy came to us at a meeting. And
yes, I think one of those people were, without saying a name, were for Stratford, weren't they?
Well, one was from Stratford.
One was from Stratford.
Right.
That was when our town turned kind of sour and turned. I have to say that our town
he has
turned.
He has such a nice wife. You know, she was a wonderful woman. And let me tell you something else. There was a woman who was, you know, vehemently supporting the power plant and everything. And as she aged and so, I ran into her at a vote. She comes up to me. She says to me, "You were right. We shouldn't be building a power plant here." She says, "I was so wrong. I apologize." I said, "Don't apologize. You did the best you could for what you believed in. I'm overwhelmed that you've changed your mind, and that's great to hear, you know. But you know."
So where do you see this now, Jay? We're right back where we were, and I think that if we stall it long enough, the investors will pull out of this one.
Well, let's put it this way: it's not a done deal.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But
And
people,
I think,
we've been saying that for, that's why I think this last election was, we have 1 minute left, my husband's telling me.
1 minute.
1 minute's a long time.
Okay.
Can I invite...
Do I get to wave goodbye?
You can get to wave goodbye, but what I can say is, Jay, can I invite you to film another, either next week or another time, and do part 2 to this discussion? Because I think there's a little more we need to talk about.
I would love to, and I hope people, pro or con, write a bunch of letters to this show, so you know you can get questions. And I don't even know if you can set up phones for this show.
We're going to try to do that. My sister show of mine, Street Talk, that I dovetailed off of as Town Talk, does that, and I have to find out how they do it. Before we leave, that is the original shirt that when I was campaigning.
First edition, is it on?
For Oxford High School
Right.
T-shirt.
They tried to, because I opposed the power plant, these idiots tried to claim I was anti-education. Anti-education,
yes.
Right? You fools, you're idiots. This is first edition Oxford High School
That's
T-shirt.
right. When
when
Kathy Johnson was running for first selectman, and I was supporting the people who wanted a high school and telling them that we could do it without a power plant. And by the God, we did it without a power plant.
we had to do it without a power plant.
We did it, and we did it by the person that came from Stratford, who was my biggest opponent. He came from Stratford against this high school, and then built one 2 years later for $10 million more than it had to cost, simply because they didn't like the people who were advocating for it. They didn't like the messenger. So when you don't like the messenger, you cost the town money. But we have a high school now, which I've always supported.
We built the high school ourselves. We never needed a power plant.
Okay, we have to say goodbye. On that word, we built the high school ourselves. We never needed a power plant, and we still don't need one now.
And we're not going to get one.
Well, I want to say that we're not going to get one now. I want to say to everybody, have a good day, good evening, and a better tomorrow. This is Kathy Johnson signing out from Town Talk. Take care. You gotta do a second.